Namaste and welcome to urban.chatterati. Today I have with me Abhijit Iyer-Mitra to discuss the recent announcements by Mukesh Ambani and the green push, I would say much belated green push by the Reliance Industries. So Abhijit, welcome to the show.
Vetrivel, thanks for having me on.
Abhijit, what do you make out of this mega announcement by Mukesh Ambani that Reliance is going to invest around 75,000 crore in the green energy push in the coming decade?
So, it's very typical of Mukesh Ambani that he's always ahead of the market. Or when he enters a market late, he disrupts it very significantly. So, for example, Geo. Today everybody is switching from their internet connection to Geo fiber net and things because it's offering you like industrial speeds at home. Or when the Geo phone came out, the way it democratized data access in India was, even though he was the last player in the market, he came after 2-3 cycles of the market were finished. And now he's basically coming up with a people's pixel, if you want to call it that, in collaboration with Google. So, that'll bring, I think it'll bring game-changing settings, in terms of quality, because people are used to these horrible Chinese phones. You're going to see a shift there. So remember, even that announcement has a very significant Make in India, Indian jobs component. The energy thing, but what surprised me was that all the attention went to that. The energy was a footnote in most people. Maybe 1 or 2 newspapers carried it at best. Now you look what the problem in Indian energy is. There is so much theft. We do $16 billion a year in electricity theft. That's equal to 4 European pressurized heavy water reactors. Okay, 4. You can buy 4 French reactors for that every single year. So imagine for this, that's the amount of energy loss we have. So what solar does, and India is a solar abundant country. We could possibly run the whole country on solar. So what he's doing is, it's a aggregated, disaggregated method. If you want, you can have large solar fields across the Aravali and the Thar to supply the whole country with energy. Or individuals can start, because you will create so much economies of scale that the price of solar panels will fall very significantly. In which case everybody can have solar panels on their roof. And, even now, a fairly decent solar panel can run your air conditioner. Right. The thing is, you don't have to worry about electricity theft because it's been installed in your house. The wire is going only into your house. There is no theft and things like that. So you're not paying for somebody else's energy consumption. You're only paying for your own energy consumption. Number 1. Number 2, what happens is, if you can run 1 AC, tomorrow you're in the position to buy 3-4 such panels, and each person can pretty much run a house entirely on solar power, removing the entire, most of our budget ends up going towards fuel imports and things like that as a single line item. You can reduce all of that. It is clean. It is renewable. You make it in India. This will create the economies of scale where you start producing it in India in large quantities. Most solar panels today come from China, or the better ones with a longer shelf life, they come from America and Israel and things like that. This creates the industry at home. So, you're looking at a solar revolution. Mind you, this was actually started by Modi in Gujarat. Gujarat under Modi contributed more to green solar energy than any other state or chief minister ever had done. And then, it just didn't become a national mission. So now he's turning it into a national mission. So it's very, very important that, it's almost, think of it this way. What if I were to tell you, you can have a centralized nuclear reactor that gives everybody energy, or you could have a little nuclear reactor at home, like a microwave oven kind of thing. It's like that. It's truly revolutionary in its vision. And in India, the problem always was the price point. See, because solar energy, the installation cost, even though it's much cheaper in the long term, the installation cost is higher. So what happens now is, through economies of scale, you're bringing that cost down. In India, it was always justified in terms of social justice. You didn't look at the economics because, but even opportunity cost wise, taking a PowerPoint from Gandhinagar all the way to, say, Kutch, to the Ran of Kutch, would have been very expensive. It was much cheaper to just install one pole with 6-7 solar panels on top. Today, you're seeing that become even cheaper. So it's a huge price point innovation. It's a huge aggregation, disaggregation, the democratization of power. It's literally the geoization of electricity generation. But remember, it's all part of an ecosystem because solar power is generated during the day. So he's also getting into high capacity batteries. And remember, those high capacity batteries will also have a knockdown effect on electric cars and things like that, because essentially the storage mechanism is the same. Today, what happens is Hyundai or Tata for the electric Nexon and electric Eon, what they do is after 8 years, it comes with an 8-year guarantee. After that, they remove it. The capacity would have become about 70-80% by then. And then they sell it as home inverters and things like that. And see, it's fundamentally recyclable, or at least the wastage is only once every 8 years. You're not burning that much and things like that, right? So it's a very sustainable process that they're coming up with. So you absorb all the energy during the day. You can run your ACs at night using it.
That is
It's massive. It is amazing. Because remember, even today, most of our energy comes from non-renewable sources, coal and things like that. Even though technically India has more installed green energy than even Germany. 38% of our circuit is installed. The problem is, with water, it runs fine in early summer, but in late summer, when the water starts drying, you don't get hydroelectricity. Yeah. Or, at night is when the consumption kind of goes up, because that's when people go in and turn on their electricity and things. So this solves a lot of problems that you're looking at, because in peak summer, when your electricity consumption is the most, is also when technically it's photovoltaic, so it's not heat dependent, it's sunlight dependent. It's going to run really well in a country like India. So very, very important things that have happened out here.
Exactly. And you rightly pointed out how Prime Minister Modi started with this solar canals in the Gujarat. That was a wonderful idea, because we're saving lots of water and also producing electricity. And we also set up this International Solar Alliance, to bring down the cost of the solar energy and promote innovation. But I want to ask you, what is the geopolitics of this green energy push? What would be the geopolitical ramification of the Reliance announcement? Remember, the Reliance is also getting lots of fund from Saudi Arabia for its petrochemical business.
Right. So if you remember in 2008, when we had the nuclear deal with America, the entire premise of it was, and you've read Ian Morris and Yuval Harari, so human development is a function of energy consumption. Right. Before, it was just what the sun radiated onto Earth. It was transferred onto vegetables or animals, and the amount of animals and meat you ate gave you proportional energy. But then chemical energy, which is to say coal, petrochemicals, nuclear energy, they add so much more energy that you have a lot more power to run electric mills, factories, and things like that, which make you an industrial country. Now, what had happened was, that was the premise of the nuclear deal. We were meant to see a great nuclear revolution in this country. Our import of fossil fuels would have gone down drastically, and it would have become like France, a 70 to 80% dependent on nuclear energy economy. And the thing about that kind of an economy was, nuclear energy is one of the cheapest energies if you know how to use it properly and if you standardize designs. Now, the thing is, you can have it even cheaper. Because even nuclear energy, you have to import from Niger and places like that. Solar energy, you don't have to import, right? It's just coming direct on you. So it removes a huge amount of pressure. I mean, even if you convert all homes to solar energy, and I suspect we will by the end of this plan, by the end of Ambani's plan, you're going to have a massive reduction on public resources. You're going to have a massive reduction in electricity theft. You're going to have a massive reduction in imports. India spends between 110 to $210 billion, depending on the year and energy prices at any given point of time. Can you imagine that entire amount diverted to, say, education, primary education, for example? That would be a game changer, because you're increasing energy and you're increasing the educational value, in which case, you're it's one of those amazing things where you can actually set up. You need about $500 billion a year to get your population to a factory floor workforce. But even 100 can remove a lot of people from poverty through education, right? So you're doing a lot of things simultaneously, which are very important. It also brings down the cost of business in India, because right now in setting up businesses in India, all businesses have to account for the fact that electricity may go at any time. And so they've got to invest a lot in generators. Right. The only thing is Indian architecture needs to improve, and I don't see any sign of that because we haven't built a worthwhile building since 1947. The only people that built nice buildings in India were the Muslims and the British. After that, and even the British in their late stages, you look at the British built Chisholm buildings in Madras or Calcutta, they're much prettier than the crap that they built in Lutyens, Delhi, which was just downright hideous. I mean, what kind of an idiot puts a fountain on a roof? But his mistakes were manifold. It's not just the fact that you can only see the dome of Rashtrapati Bhavan from Raisina Hill. It's also the fact that he put 10, 15 fountains on the roof of Rashtrapati Bhavan, which means the water keeps seeping in because it's limestone. So the water keeps seeping in and causing a whole load of water damage inside. I won't be surprised if about another 10, 15 years, it weakens the foundations of certain parts of Rashtrapati Bhavan enough to result in some kind of catastrophic failure. But that aside, this has to be combined with eco-sensitive architecture for it to be completely feasible. You can't have glass balconies and things like that. You need to have full wraparound balconies because, in this country, heat is not the problem. It is the cold. You want it to be cool. Okay, so you can't do this Western glass balconies are fantastic for Western countries where it's cold and you want heat. In India, if you put a glass balcony, it just tells me the owner and the architect are both idiots. Okay, because what you need in India is classical tropical architecture, which is full 180 degrees wraparound balcony, which prevents the direct light of the sun from hitting your actual walls and things. Number one. Okay, so that has to be implemented, which is simply not being implemented. Okay, a second thing that needs to be implemented is absolutely compulsory double glazed windows in all houses from now on. Okay, because that reduces the amount of dust that comes in, reduces vacuuming, etc. But it also reduces energy loss because if in a double glazed house, if you turn off the AC, it will remain cool for an hour. In a non-double glazed house, if you turn off the air conditioner, you will start sweating within 5 to 7 minutes. So it's a 10-fold energy retention that you're looking at that is absolutely critical for this energy revolution to succeed.
Yeah, but usually Reliance is so valuable for India. Reliance is a company which gave majority of the Indians the mobile phone. Reliance is the company which gave internet to the majority of the people. And, still somehow Reliance is this evil guy in the eyes of Hindi heartland socialists and also this woke generation in the urban cities. Why do you think these guys hate Reliance just so much? And also Rahul Gandhi, by the way.
It is because I'll tell you why. We hate success in this country. In a country where everybody prides themselves on pro-poor politics, look how immoral it is. For you to say, I am pro-poor. It's such a sick, psychotic, demeaning word that somebody is struggling and you want him to struggle. You want his life to continue being miserable. Okay, at least Indira Gandhi was better with Garibi Hatao. These people are saying Garibi Badhao because then mera bhi vote bank badega. Okay, so this is a very bad habit with the Indian electorate that, when you nationalize banks or screw over industrialists, they vote for you in large numbers. This kind of zero-sum game politics, this hatred of success, it is only because of Indians not having hope. They don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. They don't have an aim or goal to go to. And so they want everybody to fail. You remember the crab joke, right? There were crabs imported into Germany from Japan, Korea, and India. The Japanese and Korean crabs were sealed, but the Indian crabs came in an open container. And so the guy goes and asks, why are the Indian crabs in an open container? Because see, with the Japanese and Korean crabs, when one tries to escape, they all form a crab chain and they try to push out as many of them as they can. With Indian crabs, if one tries to escape, everybody catches hold of him and drags him back, which actually describes the situation perfectly.
Yes, Abhijit, but let's hope that it is going to change the entire energy scenario for India, and would also have geopolitical ramifications. But do you think it will affect our ties with the Gulf countries, because energy import is the major trade relation?
The thing is, our ties with Gulf countries are now excellent. They're better than they've ever been in the last 70 years. Mostly thanks to Netanyahu and Mohammed bin Salman and Amir Nahyan of Abu Dhabi, right, of the UAE. They've maneuvered things in such a way that, Saudi Arabia and UAE are much more active in kicking Pakistan down than even India is at the moment. So that's a fantastic thing that's happened. Remember, this may not be the case throughout. So there's always a case for you to make yourself self-sufficient. We could have gone in fracking, of course, because Assam is particularly suited for fracking. The issue is you would have poisoned your entire water resources out there. It uses up too much water. It poisons the soil, because look, there's no way you can tell me that injecting such a highly toxic classified compound that melts rocks and shale is in any way good for the environment. It's worse than the worst kind of acid you know. So it's essentially pumping large quantities of highly corrosive liquid. First of all, deep drilling is already very dangerous from a seismological point of view. But then you deep drill and you start injecting massive quantities of this highly toxic corrosive chemical, creating all kinds of cavities and chasms out there. Because what happens is, it's trapped in a kind of a sponge, right? So the way you get water out of the sponge is you squeeze it. So what happens here is you insert this chemical, it dissolves all the rock formations, and so it becomes mud or whatever and pushes it down. And the oil trapped within comes to the top into a single layer and you can extract it. That is basically what fracking is. Okay, except the thing, you're not using your hand to push it down, you're using chemicals to dissolve it. And imagine it is dissolving rock.
Yeah.
That's not good for your environment. We've seen places where fracking happens. You can set natural spring water can be set on fire once you start fracking. Water becomes flammable. Right? So fracking should have never been in the mix. I've always opposed fracking here for a variety of reasons, because, it's just ecologically unsustainable. It will be the rape of nature. At the same time, you needed energy. So, I was always a nuclear solar fan. I'm so glad that, even if nuclear didn't take off, solar is taking off. I hope nuclear also takes off, because it's been too long now. From 2008, it's been 13 years now, and you haven't embarked on it because, AEC keeps saying, yes, our domestic reactor just next year, sir, just next year, sir. For the last 20 years, they've been saying next year, not 20. Since 2006, I've been saying domestic reactor to become operational next year. और सर अभी होने वाला है, अगस्त में होने वाला है, सर आप देख लो. Even in August 2030, it will not be operational. You take a written guarantee from me. Okay, so this is one part of it. See, there's limits to solar energy. So you can take about 30 to 40%, which is still a huge chunk. The remaining 50-60% has to be taken over by nuclear. It is the cleanest, greenest, most efficient energy that you can use at the moment.
Yeah.
And if you look at what the Finns are doing in terms of storing nuclear waste, it is truly revolutionary in terms of what can be done.
Exactly.
Okay. Very safe storage, proven safe storage. So we need to, there are a whole set of technologies. Now the private sector has done its job. Now it's time for the government to, understand that you've been driven up the garden path. You need to become energy efficient, because all of this is good for India. Do it now.
Yeah, agreed. Perhaps we can have a different discussion on nuclear power in next time, Abhijit, but thanks a lot for your time. And let's hope that India will see remarkable progress in its path towards sustainable, ecologically friendly energy production. Thanks a lot.
Alhamdul Ganesha, Well Vetri.
And thank you, audience, for listening to us. Please subscribe the channel. Please join the channel. Hoping to see you soon.